The desert had never been kind to anyone, but that night it felt almost cruel. Wind scraped across the rocks like a warning, sand swirled in vicious spirals, and the moon hid behind drifting clouds as though it wanted no part in what chased her. Aveline pressed a trembling hand against her swollen belly, urging her tired legs forward. The mule beneath her stumbled with every step, its breath ragged, its body shaking from hours of non-stop travel. She whispered to it anyway, "Just a little more, please. We have to make it a little more." Her voice cracked with exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in days. Hope. It flickered inside her like the fragile flame of a lantern, refusing to go out even as danger clawed at her back. Somewhere far behind, men were hunting her. She didn't need to see them to know. She felt it in the marrow of her bones. The same men who had once called her husband friend now wanted her dead, or worse, because Aveline carried something they wanted, a child. A child whose father had betrayed the wrong men before dying in a canyon soaked with his own blood. And those men believed she knew where he hid the last of their stolen goods. She didn't. But truth rarely mattered to dangerous men. The mule faltered again, nearly dropping to its knees. Aveline slid off its back, nearly collapsing herself, her legs numb from riding. She tried to stand tall, but the horizon blurred and blackened. A sharp pain stabbed low in her stomach. "No, not now," she gasped. Her world teetered. The night spun. She tasted copper, felt sand hit her palms. A dull roar filled her ears, drowning out the storm. Then everything went dark. Aveline awoke to warmth, soft, unexpected warmth. The first thing she felt was a blanket, thick and heavy, tucked around her like caring hands had placed it there. The second thing she noticed was the smell. Smoke from a small fire, the faint sweetness of wild sage, and clean water. Her eyes blinked open. She lay inside a small wooden shelter, its walls sturdy though old, its corners filled with carved symbols she didn't recognize. Near the fire sat a clay cup of warm tea. Beside her boots, cleaned, repaired, probably stitched while she slept. Her breath caught. Someone had helped her. Her hand instantly flew to her belly. A fluttering kick met her palm. Relief broke through her like sunlight. Then she saw him. A tall man stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by pale dawn. Long dark hair braided down his back, shoulders strong and steady, skin painted with sun and wind. A necklace of carved bone and turquoise rested against his chest. His eyes, deep, dark, and fiercely gentle, rested on her without fear, without judgment. "You're awake," he murmured. His voice was low, warm as embers. Aveline swallowed. "Who are you?" He stepped forward, the light revealing the markings of a man tied to the earth in ways she could not name. "My name is Nayati Stormwalker," he said softly, "and you collapsed on my land." Their eyes met, stranger to stranger, danger to safety, storm to shelter. And for the first time in weeks, Aveline felt the faint, impossible stir of peace. Aveline pushed herself upright, her muscles trembling in protest. For a moment the world swam again, and she steadied herself with a hand on the wooden frame of the bed. Nayati didn't rush toward her. He didn't hover. He simply watched, giving her space, giving her dignity. That alone nearly made her cry. Most men she had known took space, took breath, took choice. But this man held himself as if he feared disturbing her peace. "You found me alone?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "You were half conscious," Nayati said. "Your mule was worse than you." A faint, quiet smile lifted the corner of his mouth. "He is eating now. Very stubborn animal. He bit me." Aveline blinked. A soft, startled laugh escaped her. The sound felt foreign, like something she had forgotten she could make. Nayati's expression didn't shift much, but his eyes warmed, storm clouds touched by sunrise. "You carried me here?" she asked. Nayati nodded once. "You fixed my boots?" Another nod. "You didn't take my things?" His expression changed then, ever so slightly, but enough for her to understand the offense the question caused him. Not anger, not insult, just profound disappointment that any woman had reason to ask. "I take only what the land gives me," he said. "Your satchel is yours, your knife, too." He nodded toward the stool beside her bed. Her knife lay there within reach, offered, not hidden. Aveline felt her chest tighten, her throat thick with emotion she didn't dare name. "Why help me at all?" Nayati stepped further into the room, moving with the unhurried confidence of a man who feared nothing. Not the desert, not the darkness, not even whatever secrets she carried. "There were coyote tracks near where you fell," he said, "and storm winds rising. You were alone. I do not leave anyone to die alone." His voice was steady, not heroic, not dramatic, just true. Aveline lowered her gaze. Her heartbeat thudded unevenly. No one had protected her in a long time, not since before her husband's death, not even then, truly. "You're safe here," he added quietly. Her hands tightened around the blanket. "You don't know that." "I know the land," he replied, "and I know danger. I can feel when it is close." He paused, studying her closely. Her shaking hands, the fear she tried to conceal, the way her body curved protectively around her unborn child. "Someone is hunting you." Not a question, a knowing. Aveline swallowed hard. Her throat felt like sandpaper. I can't involve you." Nayati's gaze softened, but his posture remained unmovable. "You already did," he said gently, "the moment you collapsed on my trail." She opened her mouth, but words refused to form. A heavy ache filled her chest. Fear, exhaustion, gratitude, all tangled into something too large to hold. Nayati stepped back toward the doorway. "I will bring you food," he said, "and water. Your body needs strength." He turned slightly. "After that, when you're ready, you can tell me what shadows follow you." He didn't pressure her. He didn't demand answers. He simply lit a small path toward trust, one she had almost forgotten how to walk. Aveline watched him leave, the door closing softly behind his tall frame. For a long moment she sat in silence, staring at the knife he'd placed by her side, not as a threat, not as leverage, but as a whisper. "You still have power. You still have choice." Aveline placed a trembling hand over her belly. The child kicked softly, as though agreeing. For the first time in months, she felt the smallest, tenderest seed of safety begin to take root. The fire crackled softly in the corner of the shelter, casting warm light across the wooden floorboards. Hours had passed since Nayati left her to rest, but Aveline still hadn't moved far from the bed. Safe places were dangerous things. They made you remember how exhausted you truly were. When the door eased open again, she startled, fingers flying to her knife. Nayati paused in the doorway, lifting his hands palms out, not in fear, but in respect. "I brought food," he said quietly. He stepped inside only after she relaxed her grip. The scent of warm broth and fresh herbs filled the room as he set down a small clay bowl and a cup of cool water. Steam curled through the air, carrying the sweetness of sage and wild onion. "You cooked this?" Aveline asked, surprised. Nayati shrugged lightly. "The desert teaches many skills." She took the bowl, hands shaking with hunger and gratitude. The first sip warmed her from the inside out, easing a tightness she hadn't noticed in her chest. Nayati settled against the far wall, giving her space while still remaining close enough to watch over her. Silence stretched between them, gentle rather than awkward. Aveline ate slowly, aware of his quiet presence grounding her. Finally, she set the empty bowl aside. Her heart hammered as she pulled her blanket tighter around herself. She needed to speak. The words were heavy inside her, but she didn't know where to start. Nayati spoke first. "When someone runs," he said, his voice soft as falling dust, "the land remembers their footsteps. Yours were deep, full of fear." Aveline looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "You don't have to tell me," he added. "Not if it hurts." But she needed to. Because surviving alone was impossible, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. "My husband," she whispered. "He died because of the men I ran from." Nayati didn't interrupt. "He wasn't a bad man at first. He was just lost. And I loved him, even when he walked toward danger." She swallowed hard, fighting the memories flooding her mind. "He owed money, made enemies, got involved with a gang that took more than they ever gave." Her hand drifted again to her belly. "After he died, they came for me. They thought he told me where he hid their money. I didn't even know he had it." Nayati's jaw tightened. His eyes darkened like approaching thunder. "And the child?" he asked gently. "They think he carries leverage," she whispered. "A promise my husband made. A debt I never knew existed." She shook her head fiercely, tears burning hot. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just want to bring this child into a world where he's not hunted before he can breathe." The room filled with a long, heavy silence. Then Nayati moved, not quickly, not startlingly, but with a quiet certainty. He walked to her side and knelt in front of her, lowering himself until his eyes aligned with hers. "You did not choose the violence," he said softly, "but you chose to protect life. That makes you stronger than any man who chases you." Aveline exhaled a shaky breath, her eyes stinging. "You don't owe me your story," he continued, "but you are carrying a child, and I will not let death follow that child onto my land." Her lips trembled. "You don't even know me." Nayati's voice deepened, steady as the earth beneath them. "I know enough." He touched a hand to the floor between them, not to her, but close. "Stay here until your strength returns. I will watch the borders. No one will cross without me knowing." Aveline felt something unfamiliar swell in her chest, something fragile, something terrifying. "Trust." "Nayati," she whispered. He rose slowly, his expression unreadable but his presence warm, protective, and impossibly certain. "Rest now," he said. "You're safe tonight." And for the first time in months, she truly believed it. The next morning arrived quietly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace settling over the small shelter. When Aveline opened her eyes, she found sunlight slipping through the wooden slats, warming her cheeks. For a moment, she let herself lie still. No hooves, no shouting, no gunfire. Just breath, just silence, just safety. Outside, she heard something unexpected, a low hum, almost a song, woven with the rhythm of hands working leather or wood. It grounded her instantly, steady and warm. Nayati. Aveline moved slowly, her body sore but stronger than the night before. She stepped outside the doorway, squinting against the soft morning light. Nayati sat near a small fire pit, carving something from a block of cedar wood. The shavings curled at his feet like tiny strips of golden ribbon. His long hair was loose today, catching the breeze, and for the first time she noticed faint red paint across his right cheek, ceremonial, not decorative. He glanced up when he felt her presence. She hadn't said a word, hadn't stepped loudly, but he knew. He always seemed to know. "You should be resting," he said. "I slept," she answered, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders. More than I have in weeks. Nayati nodded. Fear steals sleep faster than any storm. Aveline moved closer but hesitated, keeping a respectful distance. She didn't want to intrude. She didn't even know if she belonged here. But Nayati motioned toward a flat stone across from him. Sit. The morning is kind today. She obeyed because she wanted to, not because she was told. That difference felt enormous. After a moment of silence, she asked softly, "What are you carving?" Nayati turned the wooden figure in his hands. It was small, unfinished, but she could already see the shape forming. A curled animal, tiny ears, round back. "A rabbit," he said. "The desert is full of them if you know where to look." "Is it for someone?" she asked. He paused for a breath. "Yes." "Who?" Nayati hesitated, but not from secrecy, from humility. "For your child," he said gently. "New life should be greeted with offerings. My mother taught me that." He set the carving aside. "It brings protection." Aveline's throat tightened. She looked down, blinking quickly. No one had ever carved anything for her. No one had ever prepared for her child. Not like this. Not with intention. Not with tenderness. "You barely know me," she whispered. Nayati looked at her fully then, eyes dark as river stones. "I do not need to know your past to honor your future." Something inside her cracked open, a door she'd kept locked for months. "Thank you," she breathed. Nayati only nodded, but something subtle changed in the air between them, a quiet understanding, a thread weaving two lonely lives closer together. Just then, the mule brayed loudly from the corral behind them. Aveline laughed, an honest laugh, and Nayati's lips twitched with the ghost of a smile. "He has spirit," Nayati said. "So do you," she replied without thinking. Their eyes met. The breeze stilled. The world softened. It lasted only a heartbeat, but it sparked something fragile and warm deep within her chest. But the moment broke when Nayati's expression shifted, alert, focused, sharp. He looked toward the distant ridge, muscles tensing. "What is it?" she asked, fear rising instantly. "Footprints," he said quietly. "Old, but not old enough." Aveline went cold. "Someone has been here." Nayati rose slowly, steady as stone. "Stay close. You are not alone anymore." And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, Aveline believed him. Aveline's breath hitched as Nayati moved toward the ridge, footsteps measured, quiet, and certain. Every line of his body shifted, from gentle caretaker to watchful protector. The transition was seamless, as if both halves of him were carved from the same steady stone. Aveline followed him only a few steps before he lifted a hand, a simple gesture, a soft command, but she understood its weight. "Stay," he murmured without looking back. She did. Nayati crouched low, pressing his fingers into the dirt. The sun warmed his back, casting a long shadow over the slight indentations in the earth. Aveline watched the way he read the ground, like it was a story written only for him. After a long moment, he rose and returned to her side. "It's one man," Nayati said quietly. "Boot tracks, heavy, uneven. Someone not used to this land." Her heart stuttered. "Them? Maybe, but he didn't come close to the shelter." Nayati's gaze swept the land with a hunter's patience. He stopped at the ridge, looked down toward the trail, then left. "Looking for me." "Maybe," Nayati repeated, though there was no doubt in his eyes, only certainty wrapped in caution. Her hands trembled, and she folded them over her belly. The baby shifted, responding to her fear. Nayati stepped closer, voice softening. "You're safe for now," he said. "If danger was near, the birds would have fled, and the wind would carry it differently." Aveline stared at him. "How do you know all that?" Nayati's gaze drifted to the horizon. My father taught me. The land speaks. Most people don't listen. She exhaled slowly. I'm sorry you have to deal with my problems. Nayati turned to her fully. You call it a problem. I call it a life that needs protecting. Her throat tightened. She looked away, not trusting her voice. Back at the shelter, Nayati set about strengthening the perimeter. He moved with quiet precision, checking snares, brushing out tracks, burying evidence of her presence. Aveline watched from the doorway, guilt twisting in her stomach. You shouldn't have to do all this because of me. Nayati didn't pause his work. You're carrying a child. You should not have to do anything alone. But you don't know what they're capable of. He straightened, turning toward her. His eyes softened, but his stance held firm. I know what I am capable of, he said simply. And that is enough. Aveline lowered her gaze, swallowing hard. Her heart felt heavy but full in a way she didn't understand. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold and rose, Nayati prepared a small meal. Aveline sat beside him, the warmth of the fire brushing her cheeks. I used to dream about peace, she whispered. A place where I could breathe. Somewhere no one would know my name or my past. Nayati looked at her with a depth that shook her. Peace is not a place, he said. It is a person, or many people, a circle you build around yourself. She stared at the fire, voice barely audible. I want that. For me. For my baby. Nayati's expression shifted, gentle, grounded, unwavering. You will have it. Something in the way he said it made her believe him, not because he made promises, but because he kept them. As night settled around them, Aveline found herself sitting closer to Nayati than she ever intended, close enough to feel the warmth of his shoulder, close enough to hear his breathing slow into an easy rhythm, close enough to feel something she had never expected to feel again. Not just safety, not just hope, but the quiet beginning of something deeper. And neither of them noticed the distant glint of metal on the far ridge. A pair of eyes watching from the darkness. Night wrapped the desert in a soft, suffocating black. The stars twinkled faintly, like distant eyes keeping watch. Aveline could hear the gentle crunch of dirt under Nayati's boots as he circled the shelter, always alert, always vigilant. Despite the tension, there was a rhythm to his movements that made her chest calm, a fragile lull in the storm that had been her life. You can't keep watch forever, she whispered, stepping onto the porch beside him. The cool air brushed her face, tugging at loose strands of hair. Nayati glanced at her, expression unreadable beneath the moonlight. No one can, but I can protect what matters most for a while. Her fingers twitched toward her belly, as if to steady the life growing inside her. I wish I could do more than just wait. He reached out, brushing a hand lightly over hers, not holding, just grounding. Waiting can be its own strength. Courage wears many faces. She looked up, meeting his steady gaze. There was an honesty there that she had never known in the violent, deceptive world she had fled. You make it sound simple. It never is, he said, but it can be enough. The desert wind shifted suddenly, carrying a whisper of movement from the ridge above. Nayati's head snapped up, his body tensed, coiled like a panther ready to spring. Someone's out there, he murmured, voice low, deadly calm. Aveline's heart thudded. Should we hide? No, he said, shaking his head. They will see you. We do not hide who we are. We protect. Before she could question, Nayati disappeared into the shadows, moving silently like part of the land itself. Moments later she heard voices, rough and questioning, calling out across the dark. The footsteps approached, crunching the gravel along the ridge. Aveline's breath caught, fear coiling tight in her chest. And then she saw him, Nayati, standing firm, rifle in hand, the moon glinting off the barrel. The intruders froze, uncertain. "You are far from where you belong," Nayati said, his voice low but carrying an edge that made the men flinch. "Turn back." A tense silence hung for a heartbeat too long. Then one of the men laughed, a harsh, empty sound. "We're looking for a woman, Aveline Cortez. You hiding her?" Aveline's eyes widened. How did they know? Fear rippled through her like wildfire. "She is no one to you," Nayati said steadily. "Leave now, and you will not find trouble." The men hesitated. Nayati's gaze held them, unwavering, unwavering as the mountains themselves. Finally, muttering curses, they backed down, disappearing into the night. Aveline exhaled slowly, tears streaming without sound. Nayati returned, his expression calm, though his body still carried the tension of battle. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are safe," he said simply. For the first time in months, Aveline believed him. She leaned into him, letting herself rest against his shoulder. "I never thought anyone would stand like that for me," she whispered. Nayati tightened his arm around her just slightly. "Not anyone," he corrected. "Only the one who sees the worth in you." The baby kicked, tiny but insistent, and Aveline smiled through her tears. "And this one," she said softly. "I want him to know safety, love, a world worth living in." "You will," Nayati promised, his voice low, certain, unbreakable. That night the stars seemed brighter, the desert gentler. Aveline curled against Nayati, feeling for the first time the fragile thread of hope growing into something strong. They were not safe forever, but in this moment, the world held its breath, and so did she. Outside, the desert whispered of storms yet to come. But for once, Aveline knew she would not face them alone. Morning came soft and golden, spilling over the desert in warm, forgiving rays. Aveline awoke to the gentle hum of life, the chirp of sparrows, the rustle of wind through the sagebrush, the rhythmic breathing of Nayati beside her. The night's tension had lifted slightly, leaving behind only the quiet strength of survival and the promise of a new day. She traced her fingers over her belly, feeling the baby shift and kick. A small smile tugged at her lips. "We're still here," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Still alive, still together." Nayati stirred, stretching his long arms, the muscles under his sun-worn skin moving with fluid precision. He noticed her smile and tilted his head slightly. "Morning," he said, voice still husky from sleep. "Morning," she replied softly, not trusting her words to carry the weight of all she felt. The air was still cool, brushing against her cheeks, carrying the faint scent of sage and distant water. Nayati moved to gather a few items from the shelter, small daily routines that grounded them both, fetching water, checking snares, preparing a simple meal. Aveline followed, offering a hand where she could, though most of the work was done to protect her, not burden her. Over breakfast, they spoke little. Words were unnecessary. Their connection had formed silently, in gestures, in shared glances, in the unspoken promise of protection. Yet Aveline felt something inside her shift, a small spark of courage, a willingness to believe in something beyond survival. After the meal, Nayati stood near the edge of the ridge, scanning the horizon. "The trail is quiet," he reported. "They are likely gone, at least for now." Aveline nodded, her heart still racing slightly. How do you do it? Always so calm?" He turned to her, expression softening. "Calm doesn't mean fearless. It means you choose what deserves your fear." She stared at him, feeling warmth spread through her chest. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, yet had never faltered. I think I want to learn that, she said, voice barely audible. You already have, he replied. Every step you've taken to survive, every choice you've made to protect yourself and your child, that is courage. The baby kicked again, a firm, insistent pulse of life. Aveline laughed softly, tears of relief threatening to spill. Nayati reached out, brushing a hand across her arm, steadying her, grounding her. You're not alone, he said simply. No, she whispered. Not alone anymore. For hours they worked the land together. Nayati taught her to track small animals, to read the wind, to listen to the subtle signs of the desert. Aveline's movements grew confident, steady, not just because of necessity, but because she wanted to reclaim herself, to build something worth living for. When the sun dipped low, painting the sky in a riot of oranges and purples, they sat on the ridge, the baby kicking beneath her hands. Aveline leaned against Nayati, feeling the steady pulse of his heartbeat. Do you think we can really have this? She asked softly. Nayati's gaze swept the horizon, then rested on her. Yes, but only if we build it, day by day together. And in that quiet twilight, Aveline believed it. Not because life promised peace, but because she had found someone who would stand beside her, no matter the storms yet to come. The desert seemed to exhale, as if even the land recognized the first fragile threads of hope stretching between them. For the first time in her life, Aveline allowed herself to dream not of running, but of staying. And somewhere deep in her chest, the baby kicked again, strong, insistent, a tiny heartbeat of the future they would face together. Days stretched into weeks, and the desert settled into a quiet rhythm that was both harsh and comforting. Aveline found herself waking each morning to sunlight spilling over the ridge, birdsong weaving through the gentle rustle of the sagebrush. Nayati had taught her to move with the land, to feel its pulse, to listen to its silence. And slowly, she felt a part of it, no longer just a fugitive running, but a woman shaping her own life. Yet even in this fragile peace, shadows of the past lingered. One afternoon, while gathering firewood near a narrow canyon, Aveline paused. The wind carried a faint scent of smoke, not from her camp, not from Nayati's land. Her pulse quickened. Memories of gunfire, betrayal, and blood washed over her, sharp and unwelcome. Nayati appeared beside her silently, as if sensing her unease. What is it? He asked, voice calm, even in the tension that gripped her. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the panic that had risen unbidden. Nothing. Just a scent. A memory. He studied her for a long moment. Memories can follow you, but they don't have to define you. Aveline swallowed hard, letting his words settle. She wanted to believe that. She had run for so long, hiding from ghosts, hiding from herself. But Nayati's presence made the thought of facing them seem possible. That evening, as they returned to the shelter, a rider approached from the distant trail, dust rising in lazy spirals behind the horse. Aveline tensed, heart hammering in her chest. Nayati's hand went instinctively to the rifle strapped across his back. The rider slowed, tipping his hat as he approached the small clearing. "Nayati Stormwalker?" the man called, voice steady but wary. "That's me," Nayati replied cautiously. "And you are?" "An old friend," the rider said. "I heard you were taking in a woman and child. Thought you might need word from the world you left behind." Aveline's stomach twisted. She had fled from the world of outlaws, lies, and blood, trying to protect the life growing inside her. The thought that it might reach them here filled her with unease. Nayati's gaze was steady, unreadable. "We are fine," he said simply. "But you may speak." The man dismounted, keeping his hands visible, and handed Nayati a folded note. "She's alive," he said. "But danger, always danger. Just thought you should know." Nayati took the note without a word, eyes narrowing as he scanned the words. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the canyon. Aveline felt the weight of fear pressing in, but also, beneath it, a growing sense of trust. Nayati had never faltered in his protection. He folded the note carefully, tucking it into his coat. "We will be ready," he said quietly, his tone a promise, not a threat. Aveline exhaled slowly, feeling the tension ease slightly. "How do you stay so calm?" she asked again, a whisper in the wind. "Because fear is only useful when it guides action," he replied. "Everything else, we let go." That night, as stars spread like silver dust across the sky, Aveline rested against Nayati, feeling her belly stir beneath her hands. Despite the whispers of danger, despite the echoes of a past she could not erase, she felt an unshakable certainty. She was no longer running, she was living. And for the first time, she believed that someday, her child would grow up not in fear, but in a world that held safety, love, and hope. And somewhere in the quiet, under the vast desert sky, the promise of tomorrow whispered back. A week later, the desert woke with an unusual intensity. The sun rose fierce and hot, and the wind carried a restless edge that seemed to press against Aveline's chest. The past had a way of creeping in when she least expected it, and today it arrived in the form of hoofbeats pounding against the hard-packed trail. Nayati had been tracking the movements of a distant herd when she heard it first, a rider, then another, their dust cloud rising like a shadow over the land. Her pulse quickened, hands instinctively resting over her belly. "Nayati," she said, voice sharp. "They're coming." He turned, eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon. "Stay close," he ordered, tone steady but commanding. "We'll move to the canyon, safe ground." They hurried back to the shelter, grabbing supplies and securing the small dwelling as best they could. Nayati moved with fluid precision, every motion calculated, practiced, yet gentle enough to reassure her that they could survive this. Aveline followed, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. This was no longer just about running. It was about defending the fragile life growing within her. The riders appeared at the edge of the ridge as the sun reached its peak, dark silhouettes against the gold and sapphire sky. One of them called out, voice carrying clearly over the wind, "Aveline Cortez, you can't hide forever." Aveline's stomach churned. "Don't answer," Nayati whispered, his hand brushing hers, grounding her. The riders dismounted, moving closer, weapons drawn, but Nayati was already in motion. He positioned himself between Aveline and the intruders, eyes calm but alert, every movement precise. He did not shout. He did not fire immediately. He simply stood, the embodiment of quiet strength, and waited. The leader of the group stepped forward, a thin-lipped man with a scar slicing across his cheek. "You've got something that belongs to us," he said, voice low and dangerous. "I protect what is mine," Nayati replied evenly, gaze locked on the man's. Time stretched thin, the desert wind whipping dust into the air, stinging eyes and drying mouths. And then, in one fluid motion, Nayati disarmed the leader, his rifle moving faster than any hand could follow, sending a clear message without a single shot fired. The other men hesitated, weighing their odds against a man who moved like a shadow with the strength of a storm. Slowly, they backed away, muttering threats they knew he would not ignore. Aveline exhaled, relief flooding her chest. Nayati turned to her, expression softening. "It's done. They won't come back." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not just from fear. They were from gratitude, from recognition that she had found a sanctuary where someone truly fought for her. She pressed her hand against her belly. "We're safe," she whispered. "Yes," Nayati said, voice low, warm. He reached for her hand, guiding it over his chest. And we will protect this life, together. The sun began its descent, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and crimson. Aveline leaned into Nayati's side, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the steady pulse of the land, the growing life inside her. She knew the road ahead would still hold challenges, but for the first time in her life, she felt the unshakable certainty that they could face them, together. As the last rays of light stretched across the horizon, Aveline whispered, for the first time, I believe in tomorrow. Nayati's hand tightened over hers. And tomorrow will be ours to shape. The desert exhaled around them, carrying away fear, leaving only the quiet promise of hope, love, and life yet to come. The night had passed quietly. The stars hung low and brilliant over the desert, and the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in soft rose and gold. Aveline stirred beneath the blankets in the shelter, feeling the familiar flutter of life within her belly. This time, it was not fear that stirred her. It was anticipation, a quiet excitement that had been foreign to her for so long. Nayati was already awake, kneeling beside the small fire, tending it with care. His movements were deliberate, patient, and every so often his pale eyes would lift to check on her. She watched him for a long moment, feeling gratitude and affection swell inside her chest. He had been her shield, her teacher, her silent partner in survival. But now he was something more, a family, a home, a future. She stretched carefully, mindful of the life she carried. Morning, she said softly, her voice still rough from sleep. Morning, he replied, his lips twitching in the faintest smile. Sleep well? Better than I have in months, she admitted. The day unfolded in a gentle rhythm. Nayati prepared breakfast over the fire, while Aveline gathered water from the nearby spring. Each task, simple and mundane, felt monumental in its quiet beauty. She realized how far she had come, from running through dust-choked trails, heart hammering at every shadow, to tending life and hearth with steady hands. As the sun rose higher, the horizon seemed to breathe along with her. Birds flitted between the rocks and scrub, and the wind whispered through the sagebrush. Somewhere deep in her chest, the fear of being hunted or abandoned still lingered, but it was smaller now, diminished by the presence of Nayati and the promise of the life they were building. Hours later, Aveline felt the first sharp pangs that told her the moment had come. She cried out, and Nayati was instantly by her side, guiding her to a prepared space near the fire, his touch firm but gentle. Clara, the woman who had been with her through past labor, appeared, her hand steady, voice calm. Hours passed like lifetimes, each moment stretching with pain, hope, and determination. And then, finally, a cry pierced the warm, dusty air. A strong, full cry that seemed to shake the very walls of the shelter. Aveline's tears flowed freely as Clara held the newborn toward her. He's beautiful, Aveline whispered, voice breaking. He's strong, Clara said. And he's yours. Nayati knelt beside them, his pale eyes glistening in the firelight. Aveline placed her hand over his, guiding it gently to the child. His fingers trembled slightly as he touched the soft skin, and he whispered, Samuel. Aveline smiled through her tears, the name fitting like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Samuel, their son, their future, their hope incarnate. The days that followed were full of quiet joy. Samuel's first laugh echoed across the canyon, and every new milestone, the soft cooing, the tiny hands grasping, the first wobbly steps, became a treasure held close in the hearts of his parents. Aveline and Nayati no longer measured time by fear or flight, but by moments of love, small victories, and shared breaths. One evening, as the sun dipped below the distant ridges, Aveline and Nayati sat together on a handmade bench. Samuel nestled between them. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of gold, dust, and sky. No longer a place of danger, it was a place of life, of roots, of family. Aveline rested her head on Nayati's shoulder, feeling his steady warmth. "This is home," she whispered. He wrapped his arm around her, gazing out at the horizon. "Yes," he said softly, "and we will protect it, always." The wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of sage and sun-warmed earth, a lullaby for the life they had fought for, the love they had found, and the future that stretched endlessly before them. In that moment, they were not defined by the past. They were defined by hope, courage, and a love that asked for nothing but presence, growing stronger with every heartbeat. And under the wide desert sky, with Samuel cradled in their arms, Aveline and Nayati finally knew what it meant to be truly free.